Don't make me choose because I won't choose you. I will always choose me because a healthy me helps me serve in a way I feel God has called me to be. Words of Wisdom by Sharon Jameson. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi there. Welcome to episode 288 of the Support is Sexy podcast. Happy to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. And we're continuing with our week of Support is Sexy Rewinds. And today we are featuring Sharon Jameson. And Sharon was actually a recent guest on the podcast, but her episode is one of the most popular. And I believe that's because of the many gems she dropped throughout the show and her work as a life and executive coach in her business. Now, though there were many sparkly words of wisdom to choose from for today's rewind, Sharon's example of choosing yourself and letting people know that you choose yourself is one that we all need to remember as we continue this journey to live and serve the way we believe we were ordained to. As she says, a healthy you will help you serve in the way that God has called you to serve. So here we go with Sharon Jameson. So Sharon, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for just to be here in your presence. I really admire the work that you're doing.
Thank you. So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
You know, I think that I've always was in love with it because I saw my parents always have a job and a side hustle. We just had to because life necessitated that. But I really fell in love when I started seeing that there were ways that I could express myself and to share my gifts and to package my gifts and to use my talents in ways that I could not use in corporate America. So even though it's been hard, it's very rewarding because I was able to learn about different ways to use my giftedness in ways that I know I would have never had a chance to use in corporate America. So that's what keeps me in love with this thing called entrepreneurship, because I will always have a chance to grow.
This thing that doesn't always love you back in the same way, right?
That is so true. And I think that's part of the love, too, because you start learning how resourceful you are. And it allows you to be proud of yourself in ways that you never are in corporate America. I'm in corporate America now, so I really have a chance to express myself and experience myself, but not the same in entrepreneurship, because not only are you the creator and the designer and the implementer and the visionary initially until you get support, but you get to really tap into your full capacity and you get to learn really what you're made of in a way that you don't get to learn in what I call safe, controlled environments like corporate America. So I love it. It's hard, but I love it.
So do you balance both? You have a corporate job now as well as your business?
Yes, I do. I'm a corporate leader with a pharmaceutical company. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for 32 years since I graduated from college. But I've always had an entrepreneur job because I really enjoy that part of me, that more creative part of me, but I also like business. And I'm a minister. So I'm an associate pastor at a church. So I still have a chance to kind of do all the things that I love. And but I'm transitioning out of corporate America now because now I'm over 50 and I think it's time for me to do my soul work and go full head into the role of entrepreneurship. So I'm doing a little bit of everything, and I love it, and I feel very fulfilled by it.
That's fantastic. First of all, you look fabulous. Miss Over 50. Oh, you look fabulous. But also, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. The fact that one, it's interesting. I just recently posted on Facebook because, I used to work in media. Well, I still do, but I used to really be in the industry. And a lot of friends within the past couple of weeks have gone through layoffs at some of the bigger companies. I don't know, this month, for some reason, a lot of people were laid off. So in any case, I just was encouraging people to start their business or their side hustle or whatever it looks like, even if you're not wanting to be a full-time entrepreneur. And even if you want to keep your full-time job, there's nothing wrong with that. But start your business now, or thinking about what is going to be that thing that you do. So you're such an example of having your corporate business and starting your own thing and then looking to transition eventually.
Yeah, I think that is so important. I think that if we go into our corporate jobs, knowing that we're going to extract lessons from every opportunity, I think that there's an easy transition. I always knew that I would be an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. So I went into my corporate job, and I've been in my corporate job, like I said, for 30 years, but I let them pay for the MBA. I made sure I took all opportunity of all the workshops and trainings that they offered. I made sure that I did 5 or 6 and 7 different types of disciplines and different types of positions, because I always knew my corporate experience would be the foundation for my entrepreneurship. So I had a mindset not to make corporate America my home, but to make it a good training ground for my life's work. So I never approached it as the end all, because I knew that there could be layoffs, and I knew that as an African American woman in corporate America, that I was only willing to play the game for so long. But but it's been a tremendous learning ground, and you get to practice with other people's money.
That's right.
And I think that's important for people to understand. Practice and use corporate America as a stepping stone and not as a tombstone. But I think some people use it as a tombstone, and they don't look at ways to take the skills that they learn in one setting and transfer them to another setting, and do it in the comfort of having a secure job. So you don't have to work from this place of desperation. You can really allow yourself to expand and grow into practice a little bit before it becomes your sole source of support.
Yeah, so important. And Lisa Nichols, who I love, the author and speaker, she says to think of your job as your investor in your business. And when I heard that, I said, that makes so much sense. I share that with everyone. Everyone says, oh, yeah, it sort of takes this sort of weight of feeling guilty for some reason. People have this job shaming thing, feeling guilty for having a job. But as you said, there's so many ways that you can utilize it to edify yourself, and then for things like going back to school and taking workshops and all of those things. So that's excellent.
Yes. And I think one of the things that I saw from my parents, Elayne, I saw my parents always have a side hustle. Mm-hmm. So to me, I never really thought that I would only have one stream of income or one job. My father always, who was a minister, he had a job, he had a career and a calling. So I always know that everybody has a career and a calling, and that they did not have to be the same things. So I never felt like I had to box myself in. So I knew that I could have a corporate job and excel in the corporate arena, but also knew that my calling did not have to be the same thing. And I think that was some of the things, some of the training that I think is so critical, that we model that for our children, that your career does not have to be the only place that you feel that you get fulfillment from. And I'm so happy that my parents modeled that for me.
Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up initially in Missouri, but we moved probably like 14 times before I went to high school. Wow. My parents were teenage parents, and so I grew up with my parents in a lot of ways. And so I saw my father finish college and divinity school, and we moved here and there. We struggled. But I think that was a great training ground. I didn't appreciate it until I got into my 40s, that all the just locations and the relocations really helped me learn how to be okay internally, despite my outside circumstances, because there were some good times and some really hard times, because again, by the time my parents were 18, there were 2 of us. And they're still together. They've been together 50-something years. Aww. And they grew together. Yeah. So I started off in Missouri, but we moved a lot in Missouri. I lived in Iowa. I lived in Arizona, because my journey was based on my parents finding themselves. And so I lived a lot of different places, but I grew up with my father as a minister and being very involved, not only in the church, but also in community. And that's where I always understood and learned that I would have a job, but also I had to give back into my community. And I'm glad I did that. So I always had this sense of that you are blessed to be a blessing. So I always had this sense of being community focused and to be a resource in a vehicle and a vessel for the greater good. So yeah, we lived in probably like, I would say 7 or 8 states. So it was a lot of relocations and a lot of lack of stability. But sometimes you learn about stability. You have to create your own stability. And I'm grateful that I learned in the midst of all the relocations to learn how to make my own internal stability in the midst of chaos, because it was chaotic.
So what was a young Sharon like during that time? How did you create your own, like you said, internal stability as a young girl?
The young Sharon was a very troubled person. I grew up, Elayne, initially in Missouri. And at that time, in the late 60s and early 70s, integration was the law, but it was not the love of the people. And so I started school in the midst of integration, and I was always the only black kid. And I grew up really hating who I was. In kindergarten, my teacher hit me in the head with a chair. She says I was attacking her. By first and second grade, I was jumped on by a lot of the white kids and suffered a mild concussion.
Oh, my goodness.
And so I went through a lot of pain because I was always the first. And so I was very troubled because I didn't understand why I was being hated. I didn't understand the impact of bullying at that time. And so I really succumbed to a deep depression and felt worthless and ugly and stupid and really doubted myself until maybe my early 20s. I did not understand that I was wounded from that experience. So I was a very troubled person who tried to go along to get along and to try to find acceptance in places that could never accept me, and really succumb to childhood depression and eating disorder, etc., because I didn't understand it. And that's why some of the work I do now to help women heal those childhood wounds, because even though people are successful, a lot of my clients are what I call very insecure, successful people. Mm-hmm. And I call them insecure overachievers. And because they have wounds that they never addressed. And so they try to compensate by being successful because they never really addressed some of their internal struggles. And so the young Sharon was a very troubled Sharon because I did not know how to deal with racism and systemic racism. And I had to learn how to heal those wounds so that I could be successful, because those wounds haunted me in my career and haunted me in my relationships. And because our private pain always shows up in public places. And it was very important for me to address those. And that's some of the work that I do now.
And first of all, thank you so much for sharing that with us. That sounds like a painful time, especially as you say, not knowing. I've been through that where you don't know why the people hate you or don't like you. You just know they feel like you're different in some way as far as race.
Yes. And nobody really explained it. And right. I think that what happened in my generation, being a baby boomer, it was just expected. It was just expected that blacks should be subordinate. But that was never my reality, because my parents raised me to feel good about who I was as a person. I was always a good student. I was always a good musician. So I could never accept that I was less than, even though society kept bombarding me with messages, consciously and unconsciously, that I was second class. And just trying to exist in that dichotomy was difficult. And trying to love myself in the midst of being called all types of pejorative names was difficult. But the blessing of it is that I was able to, after I understood it and healed, to use all those experiences to help me navigate the treacherous waters of corporate America. Because since I was already accustomed to not being liked, I didn't look for it. Because I was always, I already knew what it meant to be not accepted. I didn't look for acceptance in places that I knew that people were unwilling or incapable of accepting me. So I was able to separate people liking me from respecting my work. And I think that was one of the messages that made me so strong in corporate America that many people who did not go through adversity didn't have. So I think that pain gives you wisdom that you can never take away from you, and you can implement that wisdom in ways that give you a competitive advantage. If you're able to heal the pain, you can see how you can use the messages and the learnings to be competitive.
What would you say is a thing that you sort of either held on to or learned about yourself or in some other way? I don't know if it was therapy or talking to someone or anything like that. What was it during that time that sort of helped you have a turning point where you started to realize that it wasn't about you, it was about the other people? And I ask that for anyone listening who maybe they're not going through blatant racism as you were, but maybe there's other things where they don't feel accepted in their environment and they're looking for a way to sort of turn it around.
Good. What a insightful question. I think what helped me was really starting to like me. And that took a lot of journaling and a lot of therapy to really see that intrinsically I had value. And I think my spiritual principles gave me the foundation to know that I was worthy, even though people did not feel as if I was worthy. So, and I think that when I started understanding that my worthiness was a birthright and that was something that could be bestowed upon me, it really helped me. Also what helped me is that when I started realizing that I had different gifts that superseded someone's ability to understand my gifts. Mm-hmm. Meaning that just because somebody didn't see my talent did not mean that I did not have talent. And so I started internalizing that I didn't need a person to validate my talent to know that my talent existed. And I started getting that slowly because I was always a good student, even though I was not accepted. And but it was a journey. It was a journey. So I would tell people to know that their value is something intrinsic just by being born, that they have value by a creator, however they call God. They have value. And when you start realizing that, you can sit down and start realizing all the things that make you unique and celebrate those. And that was hard because sometimes you got to celebrate yourself all by yourself. You have to give yourself a party. Right. And you have to give yourself a pat on the back. And when you learn to celebrate yourself by yourself, that's when you're starting to be powerful. But that takes time, and that takes a lot of sitting by yourself and learning what you're good at all by yourself. So when you don't need validation from others, that's when you're really powerful. Now you want it. I'm going to say I always wanted it, but when I realized that I can exist without it, that's when I start realizing my power, Elayne.
Mm-hmm. Now, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
This is so funny. I always knew in my heart that I would be doing exactly what I'm doing.
Really? Since you were younger, you had an idea?
I was younger. Yes. I always saw myself in a pulpit. Because remember, I saw my father in a pulpit. Mm-hmm. And I always saw myself in a pulpit. Now I'm on platforms. However, I always knew that I would be speaking. I always knew that I would be teaching. Because I think some of the old ladies in church used to always say, baby, you got a gift. You got a gift. And I didn't know what that was, but I always heard those messages. And so I always knew that somehow I would be doing what I'm doing now. Now, it took me a long time to have courage because I wrote my first book, I Can Depend on Me, 28 years ago, but I only published it 4 years ago. Because I never had enough courage to do it, but I always saw it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And so when I start seeing it and start stepping out on it, that's when all the things start coming together. It's interesting. People will say, oh, Sharon, you're such a great speaker. I'm thinking like, just because I'm new to you, I'm not new to myself. I always knew I would be doing it because I was always doing it. But I hid in corporate America because corporate America, even though it was treacherous, it was safer than doing it in a public forum to open myself up to scrutiny. But when I started saying, you know what, Sharon, do it. And now it's just that there's so many opportunities opening up to me that the dreams that I saw myself doing this years ago, I'm starting to see it come to fruition. But I always knew that I would be speaking and teaching. I always knew that I would be a minister. I didn't think I was going to be a minister in the church, but I think that I am a minister on a different platform. And I'm loving it. And that's why I think I can speak with so much power, because I saw it. I'm not going to say I was good at it, but I saw it.
Right. And seeing it is such a big part of it. And then I think to what you just mentioned, too, then this idea of no matter how long you've had the dream, it really comes down to you taking action.
Absolutely. And I think that's two things that I believe that it's so important to everyone. One, to have clarity, knowing who you are and knowing who you are not. And when you know who you are and what you feel like you've been destined to do, you can embrace all of that. And that's the knowing part. The second part is the doing part. Like you just mentioned, is the courage. And I think that when we have courage to follow our own conscience and not the crowd, and to follow our own truth and not tradition, that's when you will realize the fullness of your ability. That's when I think women will realize the fullness of their dreams, is that courage piece, to taking the risk. And that was the hardest part for me. And that's why I spend so much time with my clients and on the stages talking about the power of courage, because I lacked it. And because I didn't have it, I think I wasted 20 years on the margins because I was scared. And so that's why I think it's such an important strength, and to let people know that courage is not instantaneous. Sometimes it's incremental. And when you start walking in your power, walking in your vision, walking in your calling, step by step, you will develop more courage and confidence. So I think that first step is powerful. And even though people told me that 20 years ago, Elayne, I was still scared to step out. Right. And now, I think it's something about middle age that you realize it's now or never. Right. It's now or never. And so the last 10 years of my life, I've been really stepping out and doing what I know my gift is, and that is to tell my story, but also to put strategy around my story to tell people how to make those hard transitions and hard choices and those hard trade-offs in their lives so that they can live the life that they desire and the life that they dream about. And it's all about making those trade-offs and courage.
That's right. I always tell people your dreams are waiting for you. They're there. They're waiting for you to show up.
I love that. I love that.
Now, what made you decide to, well, you sort of told us what made you decide to, in a sense, become a life coach. It's sort of always been in you and that kind of thing. But what would you say then your specialty is? Is there something you focus on specifically with your clients, or how do you work with most of your clients?
Sure. I work a lot with my clients on their inner life, because I think, like I said before, our private pain shows up in public places. And even though I work with a lot of people who are very successful, high performers, like you and me, you deal with a lot of people who, what I call, are insecure overachievers. And they are doing things and being who people want them to be because they lack that sense of self-love and that sense of worthiness. And so they make decisions that maybe make them financially successful, but they feel emotionally impoverished or spiritually poor. And so I work with people on those internal issues, because fulfillment is not about things. It's not about money. It's not about the accolades and self-aggrandizement. Fulfillment is really about knowing that you're doing what you have been ordained and destined to do and doing it well. Fulfillment is all about connection with yourself and connection with others. And when we have private pain that we want to address, not only are we not connected to ourselves, we're not connected to others, but it's hard for us to connect to our destinies. It's hard for us to walk in our destinies. It's hard to move from private declaration to public demonstration. And so I really deal with people in their woundedness, because if you don't deal with your wounds will win. And so I help people to see how those places of woundedness keep showing up. It shows up in sabotage. It shows up in lack of vision. It shows up in a lack of execution and implementation. Those places of woundedness shows up in who you connect with on a personal and professional level. It shows up in how you treat yourself and treat your body. Our woundedness shows up in public ways and in public places. So I deal with people in those places, and I create a safe place, because many times the people who are the most successful are the ones who feel the most shame. They feel like they are imposters, and they feel as if there's no safe place to honestly share their insecurities, in places where they feel lonely or depressed. And so I try to deal with those high performers and provide a safe place that they can be real, that they can be authentic, that they can understand that they can be strong and weak. They don't have to live in these dichotomies of this or that, because all of us are this and that. Mm-hmm. And so I work with people to hold space for them, to help them become more, to live in integrity versus living in fragmented pieces. Because when we are not living whole, we still can be successful, but we're not fulfilled or happy. And so I work with people to help to integrate all those different parts of ourselves, because all of us have many selves. But when we can live in a very holistic way, it really helps us in our personal and our professional lives and as entrepreneurs, because you don't allow yourself to be, when you're divided, you're weak. When you become fragmented, you don't have the foundation you need to be successful or as successful.
Now, how do we know when we need that support? Because you offer a lot to your clients, as you said, when they're going through these different stages, especially, I think, to your point, for high achievers who on the surface, everything might seem like it's working to everyone else and even to them, but there's something there that's just not connecting. How do we sort of recognize that in ourselves?
Great question. I think our spirit tells us. I think when we listen to our souls, we can know when something is missing. We recognize when something is off kilter. We know when something is lacking. Now the problem is sometimes we don't want to name it, or we don't know how to name it. And so we keep getting busy, thinking that it will go away, or we look for other things to numb it, like more success, more money, more relationships, addiction, more something else to fill the void. But we know it's there. And I think that sometimes we don't give ourselves permission to say, I'm not happy. Yes, I have the house and the kids and the jobs, but I'm not happy. But I think that when we feel that yearning, when we feel that higher calling, we just have to acknowledge it and be okay with it, and be okay with saying that we can be this and that those two things can coexist. I think that people many times, Elayne, come to me in almost total breakdown because they were hearing the voice for years that were saying, listen, this is not your path. You're not happy. You're not whole. You are unfulfilled. You're marrying the wrong person. We get those messages. It's our intuition, but we try to rationalize it away because it's too painful to even consider. And I tell people, when you hear the whisper, come, let's talk about it, because a whisper is our way of life getting our attention. And if you look at your life is living at least clues for years that you're living someone else's dream, that you're living someone else's life, that you are dancing to someone else's music. And I think that when we are able to honor that voice, that's the hard part, how to get people to honor the voice. Even when I go, for example, and Elayne, I know you probably have experienced this too, you can be in the midst of highly successful women, and in the midst of one person just being honest and saying that they're not happy, it liberates everybody else to tell the truth. And I have been in circles when one person tells the truth, and I'm telling you, in 5 minutes, everybody is crying and saying, "Me too, me too, me too." Yes, I have a great job, but I'm not doing what I should be doing. Yes, I'm in a relationship, but I haven't felt connected to my partner or my spouse for years. Yes, I'm at the church, but I don't even think I'm Christian anymore. But when we live our truth, and we live a liberated life, we give people permission to be honest themselves. And I think when people feel like they have a safe space, they can honor and give voice to that yearning. Because we all have a yearning when we are not doing what we have been ordained, or designed, are destined to do. I think we all know it and we all feel it.
Explain to us what you say are the 3 things that everyone wants.
I think that one of the things that everybody wants is to feel loved. Loved, they want to feel known, seen, and heard, to feel love for who they are and not who people want them to be. Because I think that love, being loved, gives us that foundation to be our best selves. That self-acceptance allows us to try on different parts of our personalities and different parts of our desires when you feel loved. I think we all want to feel loved. I think the second thing is that we all want to feel emotionally safe, so that we can experience and express who we are, and we can tell our truth and be authentic. I think that when we don't have that, we become parrots and puppets. We become pawns. We spend money trying to impress people who don't like us anyway. We become shapeshifters, trying to sell our souls to be accepted. And I think the third thing that we all want is to understand our purpose, so that we will feel fulfilled. And I think when we feel loved for who we are and not who people want us to be, we don't spend all of our energy trying to win people over. We don't sacrifice who we are. We don't betray our souls trying to get love from places that are from people who are unwilling or incapable of loving us. So I think we want to be loved. We want emotional security, and we want to fulfill our purpose. And I think when we have that, that's the foundation for us to thrive in ways that we can only dream of. That I think when we have that, we can live our vision. We can try new things. We will take risk. We will do things totally outside of our comfort zone when we know that somebody is holding space for us to fail, and are holding space for us to be successful, holding space for us to not know. I think that's what we all want, and that's what we all need. And when we have that, the sky is the limit. Because we have peace. And I think that's what we all are trying to find, to have peace. So that, because in the peace, that's when we really have power. And in the peace, that is when we really experience prosperity. Because I believe until our soul prospers, nothing will prosper in a way that makes our hearts sing.
So one of the things that you also talk about that I love on your site, you do great videos on your Facebook page. I love those. Okay. And one of the topics that you talked about was this idea of breaking through, or when we feel like we've reached a plateau. So I wanted to ask you just to share just some of your advice about that, how we can break through. You talked about, one of the things I love that you talked about was restructuring your life so you get better, not just busy.
Yes. I think that we all, if we allow ourselves, we will hit plateaus in our lives. And I think that when we want to up-level anything in our lives, we have to up-level 3 areas. And one is we have to get more skills, because you can't do what you don't know. And I think that we have to expand our knowledge, and we have to explore new possibilities, and we need more data so we can make different decisions. So I think we always have to up-level our skills. And I think we get complacent, especially in relationships. We think that since we've been in a relationship for a long time that we're good communicators. Are we good at conflict? No. because we keep changing. We always have to up level our skills. So I think that we always have to look at how can I bring more information to the relationship or to the business or to technology. How can I know more so I can do more? And the second thing I think we have to look at is how we need different support. And I think that's a hard part. I think many times when we start businesses, we are reluctant to leave our circles because our circles make us safe. But it's one thing when our circle is a circle, but it's another thing when our circles become cocoons, and cocoons of comfort and cocoons of compliance. It's okay when we have branch support. We can have a silo when we start to limit our exposure to different types of people and different type of places and different perspectives. And so I think we have to always be open to go outside of our circles and up-level our circles. We always need to make sure we're not the smartest one in the room. I heard that T.D. Jakes said that. He says that if you're the smartest one in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Right.
So we always got to allow ourselves to be uncomfortable and up-level our circles. And that means that when we go up, we have to give up. And sometimes we have to give up friendships and give up relationships, and because people will hold you down unconsciously because they want you to be who you always have been. And if you're not growing and if people don't want you to grow, you have to move. You have to step outside and leave that relationship by its alone. And then the structure, I think we have to look at our lives and look at what are the needle movers and know what activities or what organizations, what choices are helping us move forward toward our dreams. And after we know what the needle movers are, we have to reprioritize our lives to make sure that we spend time doing the activities that have the highest yield. And I think that's difficult for people because we have John Maxwell talks about having uphill hopes but downhill habits, and we have to always look at our habits because just because we do it doesn't mean that it's fruitful. And we always have to scrutinize our behavior if we're not moving forward. And so, yeah, I believe that those three things are important. And that's why I think that growth is not an event, it's a lifestyle. Growth is a mentality. And if you take it as your lifestyle and really challenge yourself to have a growth plan, and because I find that people, I don't know about you, Elayne, don't really have growth plans. And I tell my clients and tell myself, Sharon, if this is what you want to do, what's your plan to get there? So I have a growth plan to read a book a week. I have a growth plan to go through 4 seminars a year. I have a growth plan to have different types of coaches. And my growth plan is just as important as my financial investment plan. Because if I cannot have more money to invest if I'm not growing to learn how to get it. Mm-hmm. And my investment plan is my health plan. It doesn't matter if you are growing, but you don't have the physical stamina for success, because success requires some stamina.
That's right.
Hey, entrepreneur requires stamina. And so my plan is, how can I stay healthy physically? And what do I need? How do I need to structure my life so that I'm making my physical health a priority and my eating a priority? And how can I make my spirituality a priority? So I look at those 5 things in my life: emotional, physical, financial, spiritual, and in social support, and also my growth support. Those are things are a priority, and everything else, if it doesn't fit, it gets left aside. And I make sure I have people in my life who understand what my goals are, because I tell them, don't make me choose, because I won't choose you. I
love it.
Oh yeah, I will always choose me, because a healthy me helps me serve in a way that I feel like God has called me to be.
I love that. Don't make me choose.
Yeah, I'll choose me. And I've lost relationships. I've been married and divorced twice. Mm-hmm. I have lost relationships. I have lost friendships because people want to tell you, oh, Sharada doesn't take all of that. But this is what I know. people who are not doing anything always wants to tell you what it doesn't take to do it. I'm thinking, how do you know?
Right.
My friends say, oh, Sharon, it doesn't take that much to write a book. Well, you never wrote a book. How do you know? And so I don't take advice from people who have never done what I'm trying to do. And
I feel like a lot of people, thank you for sharing that, but I feel like a lot of people, well, when we say people, most of us don't have the courage to sort of leave those familiar friendships or relationships behind. And then I think we start to believe the things that other people say. You're in a space, obviously, where, like you said, you know how to choose yourself, as they say. But for some people, they sort of struggle with leaving that because it's comfortable for us, too.
Yes, but remember, I've only come to this place with a lot of therapy. I'll be 52 next month, and it was a transition, and it's something about middle age, man. You just get to a place where you say, Sharon, if you don't like you, that's your fault.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because I feel that there's so many resources. I don't care. And when people say, well, I can't afford therapy, well, read a book, go on YouTube. There's so many different ways to edify yourself that staying stuck is a decision, and it's really being complacent is a decision, and that's not a choice that I want to make. And that's why I love your work, because what I have not seen a lot is women knowing and learning how to support each other. And I love what you're doing, that you're creating this forum to say, listen, it's sexy. And so that's why I so admire what you're doing.
Thank
because
you.
Your message is a message that I wish I had earlier, to understand that women, there was places for us to collaborate and not compete, and that we didn't have to tear each other down. And I just so admire your message. And your message is such an inspiration to me. And I celebrate what you're doing.
Thank you so much. That means the world to me. I appreciate you saying that. That's exactly what the intention is. So thank you.
Yes, and so I'm telling some of my friends, and you'll start seeing me sending people to you because you are creating something that is so vital to for women, especially because it's the time of women now. It's like I said, I've been in corporate America since '85, and when I see all the opportunities for women to lead and how women are leading and leading differently, that we're not accepting nor endorsing this male paradigm of what leadership looks like, is our time. And I think the world right now, due to technology, is really equipped, and it's an environment for us as women to excel, because we connect to each other. We know what it means to connect and nurture. We know what is our gift, is our wiring. And so we don't take advantage of the environment, the atmosphere for us to connect with each other and support each other. We're really missing an opportunity to restructure the world. We have an opportunity now as women to redefine and restructure and recreate how people engage, not only in business, but politically and spiritually, in the religious sector. It is our time and it's our turn. And I think the time is now, and have forums like your forum, to say support is sexy, really lets us know that it is sexy and it is wonderful. And so your message is so vital and valuable, and anything that I could do to make it more visible. You've already done an amazing job. You don't need anybody's help. But I'm just saying,
of course I do, because support is sexy. I need help. I absolutely need. Thank you so much. I needed to hear that today. So the message is right on time.
Yes. Keep doing what you're doing, sis, and know that not only are you saying it, I see you walking your walk in your Facebook group. I see that you're walking your walk by giving women opportunities to share on your forum. It's one thing to say a thing. It's another thing to do a thing, right?
Right.
And you are doing the thing. And I admire you, because like I said before, you see people have public declaration, but don't really move to private declaration, but they don't move to public demonstration. You are doing the public demonstration. And as you liberate yourself and provide this forum, it gives me permission to do the same.
Thank you so much. Amen.
Yes.
I appreciate that. Now, tell us about your I Dare You challenge, which I love. You're doing sort of a daily I Dare You challenge for people.
Yes. what I thought I wanted to do, because when you talk about healing and therapy, people won't come. So that's why I don't really talk about it like I used to, because the market doesn't want to hear that. People want to hear that they're whole, even though they're not. So I said, okay, I'll do something fun. So what I told myself to do in June, I'm doing I Dare You. And I'm asking them questions to hopefully make them think in a way that's not confrontational, and also in a way that is palatable. And the first thing, like, for example, some of the challenges, I told people to write themselves a love letter and to tell them all the things that they like about themselves. Why we don't tell ourselves what we like about ourselves. So I dare them to write yourself a love letter. We write everybody else a love letter. Write yourself one, and to celebrate all that you are, and to write yourself a love letter, to challenge yourself to say things that you need to say, and to say no. And today I'm going to do one to challenge people to establish better boundaries. And I hope these challenges, that people are thinking about them, and even if they don't do it, I hope they keep it somewhere lodged in their brain, that they will lift up the question when they have an experience. The first challenge was I told people to be able to decide who was part of the crowd and who was their core of their friendships. And I hope that people listen. That was the very first one, because we have a lot of people. People have crowd appeal versus core appeal. And core appeal is when you are really being who you are and people like you. And the crowd appeal is when you just being who people want you to be. And so that was my first challenge, because I think that if we can start separating your core from your crowd, you can start hearing your own self, and you can surround yourself with people who allow you to be who you be.
One of the ones that I love, too, is your message on day 14 about the different personalities that stop us from showing up in the world. Yeah. I love that. So I wanted to know if you could just walk us through those traits of the wimp, the whiner, the wreck, right? The wanderer, the worker, the warrior, and the winner. So starting with the wimp, if you can remember those.
Yeah, a wimp are people who complain. Well, let me say this. Wimp are people who don't have enough power or self-love or self-discipline or self-worth. So they don't make decisions for their own good. They are people who just go along to get along, and they become puppets and parrots in their own life. And when I mean puppets and parrots, I mean that they say what people want them to say. That's a parrot. Or they puppet. They do what people want them to do. And they never use their authentic voice to stand up and be who they are, because they desire popularity more than personal peace. And we have a lot of people who are wimps in their own lives, and they don't mean to be, but it's really that they lack the courage. That's what it is. They lack the courage to follow their own conscience and not the crowd. And when we don't have the courage to follow our own conscience, you will always be a wimp. And you know it, and you feel it, because you betray yourself daily, and that's the terrible feeling when you feel that you don't stand up for yourself. And people know what that feels like, even if they don't want to name it.
Right.
So that's the wimp. The whiner are people who complain all the time. Just complain. They don't like this. They don't like that. And they're pessimistic. But the problem is that they feel stuck, but they don't know how to get unstuck, or they are unwilling to get unstuck. So they don't want to make those trade-offs. And it's really because they lack courage too, but they won't do what they need to do. So they just sit there. It's like whine. It's kind of like a baby. Stop whining that you're hungry. Go get your own bottle, right?
Right.
But they don't know how to do that, or they're scared to do that, or they don't feel like they have the competence to do that. They don't have the skills to do that. And so what happens? They just sit there and they whine and whine and whine. And the very thing that they really need, they need support. But because they're whining, they make everybody run. So they want support, but they're energy drainers. So they want support, but they're whining, so people run away from them. Mm-hmm. And then they're left alone. And so they isolate themselves because they won't make decisions to empower themselves, because they feel they act as if they're powerless. And powerlessness is not a good look. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so that's that. The wrecks are people who are just filled with drama. They are instigators, they are agitators, and the reason that they're wrecks, or they create wrecks, is because they have internal turmoil. And when who you are inside, you are going to manifest that on the outside. And so if you are a person who speaks badly about yourself and condemns yourself and criticizes yourself, guess what? That's who you're going to be. And you're going to recreate the pathology on the outside that exists in the inside. And that's why you got to be careful when people who really are satisfied to live in their dysfunction. Because one of my clients said this, it really hit me. Sharon, I know I live in hell, but I know my way around. And so they would
hell
live
is
in
familiar.
Hell. Yeah, I was going to live in it. But however, they don't understand that they become this person that they exude pessimism, and they always keep drama going because they want to be accepted, and so they just create chaos, and that's what I call wrecks. And like I said, our private pain shows up. We got to heal the wounds, or our wounds will win. And then you have the person who's just a wanderer. They don't really make decisions. They're non-committal. They go from this to that, and they never establish roots. But the problem is, the core is that they don't know who they are. So they become shapeshifters, and they try to hide under this guise. Oh, I'm just creative. No, you don't know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And so you just and you don't know who you are. And it's really a painful state. But they keep floating, right? And they won't stay still to do the work. So there are people who are always, they have a whole bunch of half-finished projects. They always are floating in the world. And they always are, we call them flighty. And it's really not they're flighty, they're just failing to really do their own work. And so they just shift and they never feel proud of themselves. And it's really a painful thing to see. And when they start doing the work, you will find out that they're in this place of constant ambiguity. They live in this place of ambivalence, and it's painful because just think about you living in this space where you don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And you live in this constant self-doubt. Can you imagine how painful that must be? That you don't even trust yourself, you know?
I think the wanderer, when I heard you explain it before too, is the person that might be working on something and want to do something, but then as soon as it gets hard, they stray off to something else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they can't. It's that messy middle part.
Right.
So anytime they have to give up something, or even if it means that they get scared, they just leave, and so they just keep wandering, and they can't stick and stay, and so that's the hard part. And then you have the person who's a worker. They get things done, right? They're responsible, but they keep their head down, so they never see what's possible. They see what's in front of them. So they can't really, they don't plan, they don't really listen to their vision, or they're too busy that they can't even hear their vision. Right. They can't hear their intuition.
They're busy working.
They're busy, but they're successful, and they think that just because they're successful, that there's not more to it. Or they're successful, but they're still successful at 50%, however they define success, because they won't get still and sit down and take a break to say, okay, I'm busy, but am I productive? I'm active, but am I really activating my gifts? And that's the difference with a worker. So they're reliable. So it's not that they're responsible, but they're just have no vision. They're not living in their destiny. So they really are start changing themselves and the world, because we need people like that. Mm-hmm. And so that's the worker. And then we have the person who is the warrior. Those are the fighters. They gonna fight. And we need those people, because those are the people who are change agents, right? They fight against everything. Now the problem is sometimes fighting becomes a lifestyle, and they start fighting in places where there's no fruit. Mm-hmm. And they start fighting against something, and they really don't sit back and say, what about it? They need to fight for something. And that's a different energy. One is the energy of defense, and one is the energy of offense. And when you're in the offensive, that's when you are in alignment to your call, and that's when you are empowered. That's when you are on purpose. That's where you have good energy flowing. That's a very different mentality. And the problem with people who are warriors, they fight all of the time, and they're never at this place of internal peace. Because if they're not fighting, they don't feel productive, and that's dangerous. We need to know that there's a time and place for everything, and you can't forfeit your personal peace for the public good, because then you're not really good. Mm-hmm. So that's a different type of a warrior. And then you have the person who's a winner. And all these people have very different dimensions, so I'm just kind of giving you the overview. The person who is a winner starts winning early, and they love it, right? Which is great. But then they get addicted to the limelight. They start to believe their own hype, and they start getting intoxicated by power and popularity and profits. Anytime we start getting intoxicated, we start leaving ego, and we start violating ethics. And it's so subtle, but we got to be careful when we start getting addicted. And we start needing public approval or public applause, because that's when we start abandoning our truth. And it's so subtle, you don't even know it till you're in the trouble. And if you look at a lot of people who are successful, that they start living for public applause, mm-hmm. That's when they start compromising.
And losing themselves.
Absolutely. And it's so slow you don't realize it. And that's when we have to start dealing with our internal I factor, or what I call eyesight, which is like the eyesight. When you start losing sight of your eye, and you start blurring, your eyesight is blurry, you're in trouble. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing is, we're all of those. So none of us are just total one of those things. In different parts of our life, we show up as one of those people. And we are composites, and all of our strengths have weaknesses, right? And all of our weaknesses have a strength. And so I tell people to accept both of it. Yes, it's great to be a winner, but be careful. Right. Of course, it's great to be a warrior and fighter, but be careful. Of course, it's okay to be mindful of other people. With other people's needs, right? To be a society, but don't be a whiner that you don't stick up for yourself. Mm-hmm. So there's all those different parts of that, and I'm writing a book to talk about all those different dimensions, because I want to flesh those out, and so people can see all of who they are. When we are able to live in our dichotomies, in our duplicities, that's when we're powerful, because we're not this or that. We're this and that. We are spiritual and secular. We are loving and we're low down. We are greedy and we're generous. You know what I'm saying? And we're not. We are holy and harmony. You know what I'm saying? We're all of that. And when we're able to live in those dichotomies, that's when we that's when we live authentically. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait for your book on that. The one that like you said, a little bit of all of them are in each of us, right? But the one that really resonated with me was the worker. And I remember when I watched the video of you talking about it, and I thought, oh, I got to be aware of that, because especially as a solopreneur, even though I work with other people, it still is, you can get caught up in having your head down for so long that you forget about the vision. You're just stuck in the day-to-day trenches of the work. So that was one that I really was like, got to make sure I pay attention to that.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that was mine too, but I have to be careful. I'm a fighter, and I fight. I have to be careful, but I fight out of my woundedness, so I recognize it. Mm-hmm. The problem is I don't recognize it until it's too late sometimes. Doggone it.
Is that the way that most of us, that you advise us, and I'm sure you'll tell more in your book, but is that the way that one of the ways you advise us to sort of keep these different parts of ourselves in check is first recognizing it?
Absolutely. And I feel that when we know all of our different selves, because we're more than, we're a lot of selves inside, that we can, how can I say this? We need to master all of who we are. and we master that, just to your point, then you can regulate it. And but we are so many different. We're so complex, beautifully complex. And I think that's when we recognize it and we honor that, we won't feel that we have to make put a circle in a square hole.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important. It's all about self-acceptance.
What would you say entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
I think it has taught me to not try to be perfect, because perfect is an illusion. I think when I became an entrepreneur, I wanted to do everything right. And so it taught me that. It taught me also to accept that I don't know a lot of stuff. I think that coming from corporate America and being successful in corporate America, I thought that I knew all of what it took to be an entrepreneur. Wrong. Wrong. And I had to be okay knowing that it was okay to be successful in one place and not be successful in another place. It was okay to be a teacher and a student at the same time. And I think it taught me to put my ego to the side. You know what I'm saying? To be able to be a student. It also taught me to trust my intuition. I think one of the challenges with coaches is that we have to understand that we are still the experts on who we are in our message. We are the experts. And I think sometimes we give too much of our power, our message, over to coaches who want to tell us how to do it. So I tell myself and tell my people who are coached, when I tell them, I say, listen, be a student, never a slave. So I tell them, if something that I say doesn't fit or doesn't work for you, say it. Don't drink all of the Kool-Aid, because the Kool-Aid will make you die. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what I had to learn, because the most important thing about being an entrepreneur is to trust my gut. And I always did in corporate America, but because when I came into entrepreneurship and I started failing, it really rattled my self-confidence. And I had to go back to what made me strong, and that was honoring my intuition, to knowing that it was okay to not know, but to remind myself, but those some things I do know. And what I did know was who I was, who I wanted to be, and what I was trying to say. So if you keep that, you can, you might need to change it and to repackage it and to change the wording, but to stay true to who you are. Because if you are not who you are and you're not really living your message, you will not be authentic, and the public can pick that up immediately.
What would you say that you remember was maybe one of your early quote unquote failures or lessons in becoming an entrepreneur that sort of maybe blew you back a little bit? Because I think what you mentioned is so important. A lot of us, I think this is what stops a lot of us who have been successful in careers or other places from continuing as entrepreneurs, because we're so used to being successful and knowing everything. And then you start I've been through this, you start this new business and you feel like, I should know this. Why don't I know this? But you don't remember that it's a completely new space for you, even if it's in the same industry. Entrepreneurship is different. So do you remember anything that you could share as a lesson, or something that you remember, a moment that you had where you thought, wait, why don't I know this?
Oh my gosh, there are so many. I think one of the biggest things I learned was how to discern people. Mm-hmm. Because in corporate America, and you know this from your own experience, we work in teams. Mm-hmm. We work on a project. I knew that people would try to, sometimes being a woman, that sometimes a male would try to take my voice, or try to take my ideas. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That I was totally blown away when I came into corporate America. I mean, in entrepreneurship, I thought that it was going to be a space where people would want to work with me. And I was shocked and hurt. I was wounded by a lot of the backstabbing that I should have anticipated. Now, I knew it happened in corporate America. I was accustomed to that. But I thought when I came into entrepreneurship and I met with like-minded people that we were going to sit around and sing "We Are the World."
Right.
You know,
Exactly. Kumbaya.
Yes, I would, and I did not understand that it was a business. You see, I think I thought that I was joining a club versus
Right.
starting a business where people were making money, and I didn't understand that when it became people, when it came down to a person thinking, listen, I have to feed my family, that people will resort to low level tactics. And I didn't anticipate it because I didn't. It's not that I wasn't hungry like they were, but I had because I had a job. I didn't realize. I think I forgot what it meant to be totally entrepreneurship without having a safety net.
Mm-hmm.
And that when it's a side job, people approach it differently. And I didn't approach it differently because it was always my goal to leave corporate America. But I was shocked at the level and the lack of integrity and in the entrepreneur space. I don't know what I was expecting, but I didn't expect this.
It's a wake-up call.
Yes, and I didn't expect that, and I didn't also expect the level of support that I would need. I think that in corporate America, I had a lot of support. I had a secretary and somebody who does my schedule and all of the expenses. I had a company car and a computer and all that. I didn't realize that a lot of these expenses that I would have to pay for. I totally underestimated that.
Right. I did that at first too.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to buy that? That was that expense. I had no idea of the expenses that I was taking for granted, and it made me honor my corporate job better. I took a lot for granted that I didn't know, and sometimes I feel embarrassed by it. But I don't sit there in that embarrassment. I just realized I didn't know what I didn't know.
Exactly, and now you know.
Yes, ma'am. No.
So in closing, Sharon, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
It's so interesting that Father's Day just passed.
Mm-hmm.
It almost makes me cry, but it's my dad. Just a moment. And I'd say my dad because my dad taught me that there were no limits. And even though his life was so hard, he taught me what it meant to go to school with 4 kids, to serve a community even if you're not getting totally compensated. Told me how to stay in a marriage even when it's hard, when you're 18. When other fathers could have left their kids, 18 with 2 kids, he stayed. And so my father, I would tell him thank you for modeling courage, for modeling commitment, for modeling servanthood, for modeling what it meant to have a strong relationship with God, for helping me understand that my gender was something that empowered me and it was something to be expected and to be embraced, for helping me let me know that I was pretty when I felt ugly, for letting me know that my color was a blessing and not a curse. I would thank my dad, and I would say thank you for letting me see me and letting me know what's possible for me. And even to this day, at 50 years old, plus some, I still admire my dad because he taught me that sacrifice for the right things was honorable. And I'm grateful for that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you so much for letting me share.
Yes, that's beautiful. Now tell us how we can support you, your website, social media. I'll have links to everything, but anything you want us to know about, tell us about it.
Sure. I would love for people to join my mailing list and go on my website, which is my name, SharonJameson.com. They can get the free Dare to Soar coaching guide. I would love for them to do that. I also have 5 books out. I would love for people to support those books. But also, I would love for people to connect with me. I am a better coach when I connect with people and I learn about their experiences and learn about how they navigate through life. I would love for people to connect with me, but also to take advantage of any way I can serve them through speaking, workshops, any of my coaching programs. I enjoy being a vessel, and I would love for people to tap into my resources and to connect with me if I can ever serve them. And I would love to serve them, and I would love to find ways to add value to their life. And that's my goal, for me to add value to a person's life as they continue on this journey called life. And if I could ever help someone to be better, to be bolder, to be stronger, to love themselves unconditionally, I would love for them to tap into me. So yes, please connect with me. Instagram, everything is my name, and I would love for them to connect with me and to access my services if they feel that I can support them, which I know that I can.
Of course you can.
I would love for them to connect with me. So thank you for letting me share that.
Absolutely. Sharon, thank you so much. This was fantastic. And it was such a pleasure to talk to you today. I'm so glad we're connected now.
Yes, I'm so happy that I'm connected with you too. And anything that I can do to get the messages out. Your message is, like I said, is so vital. And I'm looking forward to not just now, but to a long history of supporting each other and working with you, because really you're a role model for me. And I thank you so much for just showing up in the world and all your courage and all your beauty.
Thank you.
And all of your brilliance. Yeah, so thank you for that.
Absolutely. Now, but first of all, I have to, before we go though, shout out to Hampton. I don't know if we mentioned that. Fellow Hamptonian. We have to shout out Hampton.
Yes. Hampton was a good experience. So one time, I would love to talk about your experience at Hampton. Hampton was an interesting experience for me.
It was it was the best time of my life. I made some of my best friends there at Hampton.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I let me tell you, they trained us well, right?
Right. We have to talk about it. We have to talk about it. Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Yes. The parting advice would be, know who you are, know who you are not, and have the courage to be who you say you want to be and to be who God wants you to be, because you have a job to do, and your voice and your gift is important for the world. So know who you are and be courageous enough to step forward, because you have a gift. And your gift will not only bless others, but your gift will allow you to bless you and generations to come. And that's what I want people to know.
Excellent. Sharon, thank you so much. Hold on for just a moment. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Sharon Jameson. Again, you can go to supportissexypodcast.com. Just search Sharon, SHARRON, and her show notes page will pop up with all of the resources there and all of the ways that you can get in touch with her and follow her and find out more about her services. So thank you, Sharon, for that conversation. And as Sharon talked about, it's so important to be clear about what you want to do and to choose yourself. Make sure you have the right people around you. So I want to encourage you to check out the Support is Sexy Mastermind. It's something that I'm very excited about. We have a group already in place. It is a membership community, a global online community of women entrepreneurs who are there to support you, who want to see you win, and who share resources, share information, share experiences. It helps to hear that you're not the only one going through what you're going through. And this is for women entrepreneurs at every stage of business, whether you're in the idea phase or you've already launched or you have a full-time career and you're side hustling, as Sharon talked about. Whatever stage you're in, make sure that you have support, the right people around you to help you move forward. So check it out, supportissexymastermind.com. Again, supportissexymastermind.com. You'll see there everything mapped out of what you get as part of the membership, and I would love to connect with you and support you. But whether it's there or anywhere else, just make sure that you get the support you need to move forward. You do not have to do it alone. All right. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. I'll meet you back here tomorrow. And until then, you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.